Is up YouTube? It's your boy Millsy, back with Hometown Commander, back for another episode of Hometown Opens, the show where I open some product for you. Today I'm joined by my friend Josh. He was nice enough to allow me to open up his Everyone's Invited Secret Lair Commander deck. Josh, are you excited about this deck?
Oh, I'm stoked.
I know this deck looks so cool. As we get into it, we'll get to show off some of the art. I think, to me, like, I want some of these cards just for like other decks, just on their printings. You know, we'll talk about cards like Bitter Blossom, obviously, and things like that. They're in other decks. But as we get into the box, they actually put a pencil. Yo, that's wild. So there you go. Of course, it was the what? It was like the pencil pencil drop or something.
Pencil.
So it just looks like a black pencil. It says Secret Lair there on it. So there you go. You're the owner of the a number 2 pencil with Secret Lair on it.
Yeah, so excited.
And of course, we get into the box. I really like some of the more, what would you call it, minimalistic stuff they're doing with the Secret Lairs. Now, of course, we used to love the boxes that they made back in the day, but I do kind of like the look of the envelopes. I don't know about you, but I think they look kind of cool. So we'll get into it. Everybody's Invited, a full Commander deck. This is the, this is going to tell me if I'm right. This is the 4th deck they've done?
I think 5th.
Because it was, we had Rin and Siri, we had the Angels deck. You had the coin flipping deck. And which one am I missing?
The other was 20 Ways to Win.
Oh, that's right. The Goshintai deck with all the ways to win. Yep, so this is the 5th one. I think the question, right, Josh, has come up online and it comes around a lot is the pricing, you know, and stuff like this. But I don't know. I think as we've seen with all of these decks, like the value's still good for them. Like, I don't think I've seen a single deck where it hasn't been worth the value that you get out of the box.
Yeah.
You know, it may be tough that things cost money these days, unfortunately. But obviously, like, the value seems to be good, especially here, right? The new cards that have you know, the new art alone are worth the cost of the deck.
Yeah.
Right? If I recall correctly, you got things like Raise the Palisade and Coat of Arms, you know, just really popular cards. But there we are. Everybody's Invited. This is a really cool deck box.
Yeah, I like that.
It'd be interesting to see if once you get it in sleeves, it looks like you will be able to with the spacing. So you could get it in with sleeves in here, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
I know people kind of go back and forth on like the precons and like the little decks, the cardboard decks that people bring in with them, but I think they look pretty cool.
Yeah.
But let's see, we got a little spacer right here. What is this? What is this? A little ad guide for the deck, I'm sure.
Oh, that's my boy Torian Waller.
Morphon the Boundless. So there's all the new cards in it. 4 shapeshifter tokens, which is cool. I think I was really surprised. You know, I knew this deck was coming out, so I wanted to do something for the channel. I was really surprised how many shapeshifters there are.
Yeah.
And actually not how bad they are. That's a really cool spin wheel. That's pretty. I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it's nice and glossy. Some cool new art there. Now, I don't know where the bonus cards is. Probably on the back, maybe.
Yeah, that would make sense.
Do you want to do the honors of cracking your seal there? It's just got a little spacer. I do love the look of this box, though. That's really cool. What I think I like the best about this isn't just that it's a deck box, but the material feels a little bit better than the normal ones.
Yeah.
You can tell it's still cardboard, but I think it's kind of cool to have them on there. I'm sure there's somebody out there who's collected every Secret Lair deck.
There's a pull tab on these things, isn't there?
No, normally there is. If not, you kind of just gotta. Because I had this. There you go. I was gonna say sometimes, like, since I've bought precons for like the store and stuff, like sometimes you gotta just literally like. Well, there's our face commander, Morphon the Boundless. I think Morphon's one of those really interesting commanders because a lot of commanders, especially when you get into this many colors, have like a set idea for a strategy.
Yeah.
What I think is so fun about Morphon is it could be any type you want it to be. You can make a tribal deck with anything you want, but it can also be that tribal, right? That shapeshifter tribal. And I think that's really cool about it as a card. So that you got a thick stock commander here, a Morphon. So that's pretty cool that you kind of get that. And then there's the Morphon. The foiling on this does look really cool. I don't know if we're going to get that for all the way on camera, but it is a little bit different than your normal foiling. But I do love the look of that. You want to grab the next one here? Raise the Palisade. That was one of the cards I was excited for. I think Raise is a really cool card. And what I think is good about Raise is it's really only had one printing, right?
Yeah,
in Lord of the Rings. So it's good to get a reprint of it. I know this isn't as effective as a reprint as maybe some other cards, right? But it's cool to kind of see that. Of course, there's one of the other cards I was excited to see, Bitter Blossom. I know Bitter Blossom has gotten a couple other printings, right? It's definitely not its first printing. I just love this art.
Same.
You know, Layla's a deck that I've enjoyed playing a ton. And what I like the most about Bitter Blossom is not only does it just fit what the deck's trying to do, but it just fits the aesthetic, right? Yeah. And I think this Bitter Blossom is probably some of my favorite art we've seen. I like the other Secret Lair one they did. The one with all the, where you kind of see the fairies in the formation. But I like the more, what would I call it? The more fantasy, the more dreamlike view of that Bitter Blossom more than I do the other Secret Lair one.
Torian Mauler, here's one that I was super excited about because he's always been one of my favorite changelings.
Torian Mauler is just such an interesting card. You know, when I think of Torian Mauler, I think of things like Mana Gorge or Hydra, right? Where you grow when your opponents cast spells. I think Mana Gorge is actually anyone, right? Casting a spell. But Torian's always really interesting because it fits in so many decks being a changeling.
Oh yeah, and this was in the first precon that I bought, the Chishiro precon.
I believe that. Of course, having counters on it being modified,
I always liked him a lot in that deck, and I feel like he in any deck I've put him in, I feel like he's always done at least some work, right? And if he's unanswered for a period of time,
becomes a big threat. Yeah, it doesn't. I think it could be a little bit better if it like Mana Gorge or it had Trample, but I think it still becomes a big threat, especially because a lot of times you're playing it in a travel deck that's giving your tribe some other benefit. Probably one of my favorite green cards of all time, in Avenger of Zendikar. I really like this card. AOZ is of course a more classic commander card, right? It's been around for a long time. I actually haven't had AOZ in a deck in a really long time. I just had the privilege of putting it back in a deck with my Taval deck.
Yes.
And I've really enjoyed I've only seen it once in the deck. I didn't get to play it in that game because I was kind of already too far ahead by the time that I drew AOZ. Yeah. But I think it's a fun card for that deck. And I really like this art. This was one of the ones that when I first saw it spoiled, I wanted to wait until it was up on Scryfall so I could kind of like zoom in and take a look at the art. Like, on some of these, you can see better what's going on. Same thing with Morophon. Like, you kind of want to, like, zoom in a little bit and see what the art looks like. This was one I didn't expect, but I think looks really cool as well.
I was super stoked for this because I've got this in my Slivers deck. And that's the first time I had put it in a deck. Didn't expect it to do as well as it has. But, oh, my gosh, I just love this. And I feel like it's going to fit so well here. Because obviously with the number of changelings you've got in the deck, you're just getting insane card advantage with this.
The only deck that I've really ever played Kindred Summons in was my Clouth Dragons deck. Because you have so much mana and you're willing to just use it for anything. I thought about Kindred Summons a lot in something like Pantlaza or in something like my new Urania list, because you're going to have the mana to go get those things and you have the haste enablers, right, to push the creatures in. But another one that it's funny because it's not a shapeshifter, but I think it fits what the deck wants to do so well, is Tendershoot Dryad. This is a creature that you may not see it in every list, but I think Dryad's so cool because if left, like you talk about Torian Mauler, if you leave this on the battlefield for a whole turn cycle, you're going to have saplings online that are going to start becoming a problem. And most decks that are using Tendershoot Dryad are using some way to take advantage of the tokens as well. Yeah. So then you're just building more and more value. And this is another one of those cards that I think the camera probably won't do the art on this one justice. Another really pretty card. And this is, I think, the one thing that's made me so happy with these commander decks is they're not just doing 4 cards. Like, they're doing a couple really cool cards for each of these decks. And you know all of these are going to hold value if you really ever wanted to move them, you know? Of course, you know my love for this card. We've seen this on the table many times in our play group, my love for Coat of Arms.
I've got this in my Slivers deck, and the crazy thing to think about here is you have to be a little bit more strategic with playing it in this deck than you do others, because if you're just playing dragons and no one else is playing dragons, right, that's going to give you a big buff that's one-sided. But if you're playing something with, if you're playing it in a...
If you're playing a bunch of shapeshifters, you think about it, you're buffing your opponent's creatures as well.
Everyone's opponents are getting the same buff, or everyone's creatures are getting the same buff that you are.
And we've seen this from time to time in my play of Coat of Arms in our play group. Like, we've seen it a couple times where I've ended up helping one of my opponents out because they have a ton of creatures of the same type as well. And it's that. But Coat of Arms is a really interesting card because... Again, people tend to use it offensively. You put it down at the right time. I think it's interesting, Coat of Arms versus Banner of Kinship and kind of the difference between them. Banner is a little bit less of a high ceiling because you kind of have to put it in at the right time, but then it sits around and helps. And I kind of like that it retains its counters versus the Coat of Arms that you kind of need to build up. So it's got that dichotomy of value. But I think in a deck like this, Coat of Arms is just so good because everything's going to end up sharing a type. And I think you see with Morophon, like, as you get into building the deck a little bit more, it's not just all about having shapeshifters. You still want to throw in some creatures of other types, right? Whether you want to go like Legends Matter and go with all the the lords that give buffs or whatever. There's Maskwood Nexus, of course, makes a ton of sense. Makes the shapeshifters, lets all your creatures become a key type, and these are the kind of cards that are going to point you to what do I want my other prevalent type to be. Whether it's Slivers works so well in a deck like this. I think there's other options with things like dragons, or I've seen people do. Humans, because you have so many different humans in 5 colors. Again, there's so many options, and what's fun about Maskwood Nexus is it will take any creature in the deck that isn't that type and turn it into that type, so all your creatures then keep getting that benefit. I was very surprised at the price on this card when I looked it up the other day. The new Sol Ring. This is beautiful. I mean, I know Sol Ring's a natural part of our format, but this is pretty. It's so pretty looking. And Sol Ring's one of those cards that I think heck, everybody has an opinion on Sol Ring or what it is or what it isn't. But I think what makes Sol Ring fun to me is at least we're still trying to print it with new arts and new frames and new things. It's not like the same art all the time. Every new Commander deck has some sort of new art for Sol Ring that fits the world, so there's more options in your expressionable Sol Ring and Arcane Signet than there has been ever before, which I think makes it a little more fun than just being like, oh, here's another Sol Ring.
That's very true.
So those are your 11 new cards, right? Or 10 new cards, sorry. Morophon and then Sol Ring, all new arts. This is the only exclusive way to get these. And again, I'm really happy with the cards they chose. I mean, we could always nickel and dime what cards should have been chosen over others, but I think these are 10 really good offerings. And I think you see a lot of popularity in our format across these 10 cards. It's not like it's only Morophon that's going to use these cards. And I think that's pretty useful. Josh, I don't know how you want to go through the rest of the deck. We can just start rocking through if you want to sleeve these bad boys up. I want to make sure you keep those protected. When I was looking through this deck list, I was very intrigued. So a big thing to note, although the list doesn't really exist anymore, right? Because we no longer have the list slots in our things. We're doing special guests. These are new list printings. You can see by that little Planeswalker symbol down in the bottom left. So they're basically just, most of these are the original printings or a printing that already exists of these cards, and they're just basically reprinting with that symbol. Mirror Entity to me makes a ton of sense, right? It's already one of the changelings you want, and that ability can get pretty out of hand right at the right time, depending on what you put down. I was very intrigued by the party, right? It was something I hadn't thought about when I originally looked at this list. And then it showed, and then I was like, well, yeah, all your creatures are going to pretty much be able, as long as you have 4 shapeshifters, right? You're going to have a full party, and then you're going to be able to take advantage of all your effects. Of course, there's Arcane Adaptation to go along with that Maskwood Nexus. If I recall correctly, I think this deck also has a Leyline in it. I don't know if it has Leyline Transformation in it or not, but you have that, and then you'd also have the Conspiracy, the black enchantment, that all do very similar things. Double Down was a card that caught me off guard. This one's pretty cool, because again, all of your shapeshifters are going to be outlaws, and then you get to copy them.
When I was thinking about that, I had originally thought like, oh, I wonder if they're going to put something like Necroduality in here because it focuses on zombies. But the Double Down is really interesting because there's more. Zombie is like pretty key and pointed, but you can have a lot.
I kind of like this a little better than something like Litjar. What is it? Collections of Litjara, because this is going to hit a few more types than just pick a type. Same thing with something like Kindred Discovery. This is a little bit more like Maskwood Nexus, where you're going to pick a certain type and care about it, even though all your shapeshifters are going to be it. Connections, I was confused at first. I was like, okay, Connections is a great card, but why is it in the deck? Well, it makes shapeshifters. That makes a ton of sense. I forget about the third mode. I think most of the time you see people run the first 2 modes.
I use it really heavily in my Pirates and Spiders.
Again, Kindred Dominance makes a ton of sense. One-sided board wipe. Magda, great idea. All your shapeshifters are going to end up being dwarfs, and then since all your shapeshifters are also dragons, you can go get them that way. Or if you wanted to play a couple key dragons in the deck, you could do that. And then you're going to start seeing some warrior shapeshifters. Feline Sovereign's an interesting one, right? Giving all your shapeshifters, because they're cats, that buff. Realm Walker, another great shapeshifter. Got Atla Palani, right? Another fun option. Bears of Litjara makes shapeshifter tokens, right? Bernard was one I was excited to see in here. I think this commander just doesn't get a ton of love. And the fact that all your creatures are going to get that trample feels really good for just 4 mana. Bruce Tarl, I did a double take on because I thought it was the Commander Legends one that gave out double strike. And then I looked at it again, I'm like, oh no, that makes sense, because then they're all Oxes, so they're all going to have double strike. Of course, there's your starter, your Slivers you love so much. We've got a couple of them in the deck, if I recall correctly. Kiri there, buffing all of the creatures, and you can actually get them back.
I think this, from my understanding, this is the only non-foil printing of Kiri. Because the only other printing was in the Commander deck when she was foiled.
No, there was an extended art version.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, almost all the Commander cards now have extended art versions as well in the collector boosters. But you would be right. There's Ren and Siri, of course, with makes sense here, right? With all your creatures being that. Roka Morel, they're caring about slivers, so giving basically all your creatures, all your slivers and all the other creatures that type. So kind of another copy of that Maskwood Nexus style effect, right? Sophia, I thought was kind of a fun ad.
Yeah.
Giving all your dogs that benefit there, kind of cool. Another again, some great reprints of all of these changelings to kind of do what you want to do. Realm Walker is a card I just find really interesting. I don't play it a ton myself, but I think it's a cool card. And then for the land base, I thought the land base was a lot better than I expected.
Yeah.
Right, 5 colors is really tough. You and I both know you either go high dollar or you go low dollar.
Yes.
Right. The Painlands make a ton of sense. They're very good at what they do. Exotic Orchard, right, obviously makes a ton of sense. You want to play as many of those as you can, right, since they tap for all 5 colors. The thing I like the most about the Painlands is they're getting cheaper.
Yes.
Man, I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, some of these and some of like the more desirable ones, like a Dark Art Waste, were really expensive.
Yeah.
Whereas now they've been putting them in precons again, which is really useful. Secluded Glen and some of the lands like this where you have to reveal a card from that type from your hand is fun because you know you're going to have those shapeshifters. I love the World Tree. It's a land I've always really liked in 5-color decks because as soon as you get to 6 lands, you basically just fix all your lands.
Yep.
Right. There's the Maya Coast. Crib Swamp, of course, makes a ton of sense. Not only is it a typed spell, which is interesting, right? We don't get a lot of kindred spells anymore, but also then you just get to exile something and make and then make a token. Its controller makes a token. The fun part here is, I guess if you really needed to, you could exile one of your own things to get a token. But again, the point is at least you're still casting something of that type. And we see a couple there. Kinsbane Cavalier, I think, is fun for the double strike.
Yeah.
This was a card that I missed when I have a Brew of Morophon coming up for the channel. This is a card that I originally overlooked in the pre-con, and when I came back to it, I was like, man, that makes a ton of sense. For just one turn, you get to give one of your creatures that type that you want. Some more changelings. Arcane Denial always good. Distant Melody for the draw. Of course, we got to see something like Pongifier Rapid Hybrid, right? Good cheap removal. I forget Graveshifter's a changeling.
Oh, yeah.
Because I was so used to seeing this card in like starter decks and things like that I always forgot that it was a changeling. Skeletal Changeling. I like that they picked some of these old borders for some of these instead of the new ones. Like these guys both being from Warwind, if I recall correctly, is the logo there. Beast with Instant Removal. And we've got some regular ramp with things like Cultivate because we are playing basics, but we do have some options to go put some Triomes in here, something like that, if you want to go for that style of ramp. There's another one of your slivers. Again, these mana tapping slivers are so good in this deck, right? Because you're going to have so many creatures to tap. I also really like this Harbaz Druid, because you're going to have all your shapeshifters be allies, right? Meaning you're adding a ton of mana. I think it's kind of the same thing for something like, what's the elf's name? The one that taps for, like, the couple that tap for a green for each elf you control.
Oh, yeah, like Circle of Dreams.
Yeah, like you have options like that, right, that you're going to really be able to take advantage of. There's another one, right, Manifest Swiver, Mass Vandal. More Tight's kind of fun. It's kind of fun. Just another interesting one. I like Risen Reef in this deck a ton. Just one of those cards that's going to give you that little bit of ramp. Spoil of Adventure, there's going to end up being 2 mana, right, but if you have enough shapeshifters out with a full party. Would have loved to seen a different art for Arcane Signet, if I'm honest, but it's okay. I mean, it's what you expect. Bloodline Pretender is kind of a fun one. Pick your type, get to grow with them. And then we get, I believe this one hasn't been printed in a while, the Amphitheater. If I recall correctly, it hasn't been printed since Lorwyn. So it's cool to see some options like that. You can see we have some of the basic tap-in tri-lands. Commander Tower, we see an older printing of Buviak. I really like the new Tarkir art for it. Guiltleaf Palace, there's your elf one. Jungle Shrine, Opulent Palace. We're seeing a lot of these tri-lands that are just so useful. It's, of course, you want to go fetches, you want to go in triomes, you want to go all that, but these are really useful at what they do. Especially, my suggestion, if you're building a 5-color deck and let's say you got this deck and you're looking for inspiration, try to figure out, I would say, the 2 or 3 colors your deck is the most centered in, and focus on having your lands produce those colors primarily, and then have, like, so let's say I was building a Teamer deck, or teamer based 5-color deck. Well, this is great because it adds me the white and it adds me 2 of my 3 colors.
Yeah.
Same thing here, adds me 2 of mine and adds the black.
Yeah.
These are the most effective tri-lands because you can still use them for the things you're trying to cast, but you also can cover your corner case colors. And of course, things like Path of Ancestry, City of Brass, you know, those cards in here are the best because they're going to add 5 colors of there. I hadn't seen this one before, if I'm honest, this Wanderwine Hub, when I was looking at the deck list. Just because I didn't play during Lorwyn.
Yeah.
So I didn't... I had really never ever seen it. Of course, we've got a ton of basics. A bunch of basics. And then here's your tokens. So I believe it said there was 4 shapeshifter tokens, right? There's Tiny, of course, off of Sophia. I don't believe that's what they were talking about, the shapeshifter, right? That was one that, because that was in the Mirror deck.
Yeah.
There's the Double Masters one, and there's the pretty dog. Food from Wilds of Eldraine, okay. And then the plan, we got a Treasure, got a Clue. There's your Fairy Rogue for Bitter Blossom, with an Ox on the back for Bruce Darrell, another Fairy Rogue, and the Ape for Palmify. I like this Sapperling. It's one of my favorite Sapperling arts. Ape on the back. All right, so here we go. Looks like we're getting into it. And there's your Sliver token. Yeah. Now we're getting into our new token. Man, that is pretty. That kind of reminds me of like, I almost get an Eldraine vibe from that one.
Yeah.
That is pretty. Is it double-sided or is it?
They have a different art on either side, I thought. Oh, okay. So it's 4 separate tokens. Then.
Which I actually kind of like a little bit better. Man, that is pretty. So it looks like a little bit different.
Yeah, each of them I think has a different little shapeshifter shape.
That's cool. And then I believe it's our bonus card here is the last one. Looks like almost looks like Lotus Cobra to me.
Yeah.
But let's see. I saw some people Changeling Outcasts. And that's what we got here, Changeling Outcast. Of course, makes a ton of sense, right? Oh, yeah. Probably one of your best changelings because it can't be blocked, right? So really great for those, really great for things like Coat of Arms, right? Because it can't be blocked. Well, I appreciate you bringing it over and letting me open it. I think this deck's a ton of fun. Like I said, I'll have it coming up for the channel pretty soon. I'm excited to see this one in action because I know you'll be working around it here soon. Morophon's just a fun commander. I think we talk a lot of crap about 5-color good stuff commanders because they tend to accumulate a lot of decks towards them. Yeah. But I think I've always looked at Morophon differently because it's a commander that most of the time ends up being a tribal commander. Here, though, we just get the fun of being a kindred, everything caring about type commander. I channeled a little bit of your love in the deck that I built, bringing in Voya, growing all your creatures, doing stuff like that. I was trying to find legends like Death Baron to give all of them Death Touch, to make them a little bit harder hitting in combat, right? Just trying to find ways to, like, if you need to attack with your shapeshifters, making sure they can hit through without just folding. Because I think that's the problem, right? As you go wide in creature decks, you have to find a way to punch through, otherwise you're just going to get chump blocked into oblivion. And so it was finding ways to give them flying, like with a couple of the slivers that can give them flying. I think you'll see a lot of people push this towards slivers because it's one of the easiest. Yeah. It's one of the easiest creature types to find big value in. But I think there's a lot of other fun ones out there. Personally, I love the idea of trying to find tribes that maybe don't have enough there on their own, but Morophon can really help them with.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think it could be. I think elves could be another really popular one because you get to play some of those really corner case elves instead of going just like Golgari or going just or going in Bant towards Galadriel. Like, you could still have some fun with those. I've seen people build Morophon dragons. It makes a ton of sense, right? Yeah. Playing all the 5-year dragons together. But I am excited to see what you do with this on the tabletop. I'm sure just like your Slivers decks, I will have my uphill battle against me some games. But Josh, is there anything you want to say to end our video out here? How excited you are for the deck, or do you have any specific plans for it?
Dude, I'm stoked. Obviously, like we talked about, Voya, and there's a few of those other cards that care about creature types that maybe aren't super common or heavily thought about when using those. And so I was super excited for this because there's like, I wanted to put Minotaurs in a deck, but you don't have enough for Minotaurs. And I've even joked about whales in a deck, and if I wanted to, I could make this deck.
Saffron might be interesting in this deck. I'd have to double check all the stuff it gives for Minotaurs, but I know it gives some good stuff. Yeah. To me, I was trying to think of like what legends that like care about their types do you put here, and what do you take advantage of? And the answer is it's nearly endless what you can choose to do. I think Voya is a great option because it's going to make all those shapeshifters bigger, and to me that's probably the last hurdle you need to go from being a threat to being a damaging threat. Is how do you take those shapeshifters and make them big enough to like really push them through for damage. I think it's evasion, right? It's death touch, it's getting them bigger, it's growing them. And I think those are all options. Of course, you can go kind of the more, you know me, you could go kind of more of the fun route and go towards the humans that just buff all your humans. I think you have the options of if you dump some more legendary creatures in here, you have the option of something like Joda if you want to kind of bring in some of that legendary love. I just love that there's so many options that you can choose to do. But Josh, thank you so much for bringing the deck over, allowing me to open it with you. This is the kind of stuff that I probably wouldn't have bought for myself, but it's so cool to see it, and I'm excited to see it on a tabletop pretty soon to get beat on down by it, I'm sure. But Josh, thank you so much for coming over, and I will catch you on the next one.